One of the things that absolutely hurts my soul is to create a beautiful tooled pattern, lots of depth, crazy amount of definition in it, and then have to dye it black. That black on black absolutely destroys all the depth and the work that you've put in it, right? Well, not necessarily. Today, I'm going to show you how to give that black on black some extra depth and definition so you don't lose all that work that you've done. That's coming up. Hello everyone, my name is Daniel Reitz. This is Weaver Leather Supply. Today, we're going to be taking a look at 3 different solutions for that black on black. It totally kills the depth in all your tooling. As leather crafters, leather toolers, one of the things that we really strive for is getting that ultra realistic depth and definition to our tooling. When you have a piece like this and somebody thinks that the leaf is a second piece of leather that you've glued onto the piece below it, man, that's one of my favorite things ever. And if you put black dye on that, it totally washes out all the depth. You can still see it, but it's not nearly as dramatic. Today, we're going to take a look at 3 different solutions for making sure that doesn't happen. Now, one little bit of a disclaimer here, and that is no matter what you do, you're never going to have the amount of separation and distinction that you had prior to the black on black. You just can't get that much of it back. But there are a few things that we can do to really enhance the definition and the depth that we've created to get some of it back. If I'm going to show you how to fix a black on black tooled project, well, the first thing that we're going to need is a leather project that's been tooled that we can then dye black. Yeah. As much as it hurts my soul to say it, it's time to erase all that depth and definition that we just created and dye it black. So now that that's done, how are we going to get back some of that depth and definition that we worked so hard for? Well, essentially what we need to do is we need to create some separation and some definition between the background and the part that we want our eye to be drawn to. So how are we going to do that? Well, essentially what we're going to do is we're going to take that black background and we're going to put a different color dye on top of it, but only in the background. Now, a couple of things real quick that I want to mention before we dive into it. Number one, you need to test any color combos that you're thinking about doing on a separate piece of leather. So if you're thinking about putting blue on top of black, test it just to make sure it's the look that you want. Number two, if this is a project for a client, it's really, really important that you get their approval before you do something like this, because if they're not expecting it and they're just wanting a flat black, Well, this could totally throw off the entire project. So it's a good idea to take some samples with you. That way they can be on the same page with you, but definitely get the client's approval before you do this. After we've got the second color laid in, we're gonna go back in and we're gonna buff it. We're gonna be very, very careful not to smear that dye up onto the focal point. In this case, it's gonna be the leaves, but we wanna buff that background just to lift out any excess dye that may still be sitting there. And it's gonna prevent rub off in the future. And it's gonna kind of create a little bit of a metallic shine that's really cool. Now, that technique's not going to be right for every project, and it's not everyone's cup of tea, which means we need one or two more tricks in our bag here, which is going to bring us to the second technique, which is creating soft, subtle highlights in our tooling. The reason black on black removes all that depth and definition from our work is because it eliminates the lowlights and the highlights. Everything moves from the foreground and the background into the midground, and it just kind of flattens out. So it stands to reason if we go back in and we add more highlights into the focal points, in this case the leaves, then we should get some of that depth back. To do that, I'm just going to be using Angelus paints and a dry brush technique. The trick is to pick a really subtle highlight color. We don't want to go with something like white. That's just going to scream at you. But something like pewter, which has a little bit of a metallic flake to it and it's really subtle, that's going to catch the light. And now we've got something we can work with. Dry brush technique is really, really simple. You just want to get a little bit of paint on the end of your brush, brush most of it out on a palette or a paper towel or something like that, and then go back in and lightly brush across the grain and let those ridges pick up those highlights. By using a subtle color that's got a little bit of a metal flake in it, it's going to catch the light. It allows us to get some of that depth back that we lost when we did the black on black. And last is my favorite technique of the three. That's going to be adding a high gloss finish to the project. Now, we're not adding it to the background. It's just the focal points of the project. So in this example, be the leaves and the vines and the acorns. We want to draw our eye to the focal points, and by putting something on it that's going to catch the light and accentuate the curves, we're going to get some of that depth back. So those are going to be three of my techniques that I use to get some of that depth back after I've had to dye a project black. Now, I got a few questions for you. Number one, which of these techniques are you going to use in some of your projects going forward? Number two, what kind of projects do you see yourself using them on? And number three, do you have a technique for bringing some of that depth back out that the rest of us should know about? Leave it in the comment section below. So that's going to do it for this video. I will see you in the next one. In the meantime, go make something amazing.